Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night just because of a random comment from last week? Have you ever stared at a screen, imagining all sorts of worst-case scenarios just because of an unanswered message? If so, you're not alone. That's overthinking, a silent storm in the mind. It doesn't shout, but it wears you down. It's not immediately dangerous, but it quietly suffocates your peace. Modern people call it overthinking. The Stoics called it unnecessary thinking, and they learned how to stop it more than 2,000 years ago. To them, the mind is a garden. If you don't carefully choose what you plant, weeds will grow. Worries, regrets, fears, these are the weeds of an undisciplined mind. In this video, I'll share with you 7 Stoic techniques to help you clear the mental fog, see what truly matters, and start living with clarity, decisiveness, and freedom. Number 1. Realize what is in your control and what is not. Some things are up to us, and some are not up to us. Epictetus. This quote is the foundation that helps Stoics step out of mental chaos and into a life of clarity. If you're stuck in a spiral of overthinking, if your mind keeps looping the same unanswerable questions, there's a good chance you're trying to control things that are beyond your reach. And that's why you can't stop. Overthinking doesn't usually come from weakness. It often starts because we're too eager for things to go our way. You send a message and get no reply. Your brain jumps to conclusions. Are they mad? Did I say something wrong? Maybe they don't care anymore. You're about to walk into an interview, and before it even begins, your mind fires off a dozen unsolvable questions. Will they like me? What if I say the wrong thing? How will I deal with rejection? The mind becomes a non-stop film projector. But the issue isn't imagination, it's the starting point. You've forgotten what's actually within your control. Epictetus wasn't being poetic when he split the world into two: what depends on us and what doesn't. He believed that human peace depends entirely on knowing that boundary and staying close to it every day. Look at the story of Nelson Mandela, a man imprisoned for 27 years on Robben Island, stripped of his freedom, separated from his family, treated as a dangerous criminal simply because he dared to fight against apartheid. For nearly 3 decades in prison, Mandela had no control over what happened outside. He couldn't change the laws, influence the government, or know when he'd be released. But he held on to one thing: how he responded to adversity. Mandela chose to learn, to read, to meditate, and to train his mind right there in the cell. He refused to let bitterness take over, and when he finally stepped out of that prison, he didn't seek revenge, he forgave. Because he understood. True freedom isn't just walking through an open door. It's refusing to let hatred imprison you from the inside. Mandela's story is a living embodiment of Stoic spirit. You can't control the situation, but you can control yourself, and that's enough to change the world. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor and a philosopher, understood the limits of his own power. He could command an empire, yet reminded himself daily, anything outside the mind lies outside his peace. Other people's reactions, not in his control. The weather, not in his control. Death, not in his control. But his response to all of that, always within reach. Learning to clearly separate what's yours to handle and what belongs to the world, That's the core skill for escaping overthinking, because when you stop reaching into someone else's life or the future or uncertainty, you free up a massive reserve of energy. Instead of agonizing over, do they like me, you start asking, am I acting in line with my values? And that's the question worth living by. Remember, you don't need to control everything to be at peace. You just need to control what you're thinking in this moment, and from there, everything starts to come into focus. Number 2, focus on action, not guesswork. We often confuse analysis with progress. We think that if we just think a bit more, imagine a few more scenarios, everything will become clear. But the truth is, the more we speculate, the more tangled we get. The more we think, the more we freeze. Overthinking creates the illusion of preparation, but it brings no real progress. It's a spinning wheel grinding down the mind without taking us anywhere. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, philosopher, a man of action, once said, "To stop talking about what the good man is like and just be one." And that's the essence of Stoicism, to live by action, not by theory. You don't need to write an essay about courage. Just be courageous. You don't need to explain why honesty matters. Just live honestly. Stoics don't seek perfection in speech, they seek consistency in behavior. Overthinking is how we try to control the uncontrollable, other people's emotions, a future that hasn't arrived, situations that haven't happened. But action, no matter how small, is the only thing always within our control. If you're confused, take a step forward, even half a step. No one ever got out of a maze by sitting still and drawing imaginary maps. Let's look at a familiar situation. You've just texted someone and they haven't replied. Your mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Should I message again? Or is it better to stay silent? Meanwhile, time passes, anxiety grows, and you do nothing but imagine. But the simpler choice is right there. Send a kind follow-up. Show goodwill, then leave the rest to life. Action, even if it's just a message, is how you take back the initiative. And sometimes, that's all it takes. You don't need to be 100% certain to act. You just need to be certain that what you're about to do aligns with your values. The rest will come when it comes. Stoics understood one thing clearly. If you want to change something, you have to do something. The world doesn't change when you think differently. It changes when you act differently, and no one can live your life for you. Picture this. You're standing on a high rock ledge, facing a body of water, cold, deep, uncertain. You could stand there for hours, imagining the fall, wondering if you'll float, if someone might rescue you, or you could jump and start swimming. Life doesn't wait for those who stand still and speculate. What makes overthinking dangerous is that it often wears the mask of responsibility or careful thought. But most of the time, it's just procrastination in disguise. Stoicism isn't against thinking, it's against drowning in thought. There is a time to analyze, and there is a time to stop analyzing and start doing. Knowing which is which makes all the difference. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a first step, then a second. Only when you act does clarity begin to emerge. Clarity doesn't come before action, it comes during it. Stoicism teaches us to live like a soldier in everyday life, resilient, proactive, without complaint, without delay. That soldier doesn't need to know how the war ends. They only need to know today's mission and carry it out fully. Remember, if you're unsure, Choose the simplest thing you know is right and do it. A small right action is always stronger than a big idea left unrealized. Send the message, make the call, write the paragraph, walk away from the toxic chat, submit the form, apply, stand up, step out. Do anything so long as it's real and it moves you forward. Because in the end, you don't escape the spiral of overthinking with another thought. You break it with your first action. And if you've ever felt afraid to act because emotions cloud your reason, you're not alone. That's a challenge many face. But the Stoics had a powerful tool, one that helps you act not out of impulse, but out of steady reason. That's what we'll explore next. A principle that will change the way you see the world and yourself. Number 3, think rationally, not emotionally. If someone can lose their freedom, lose control of their body, and still hold on to their mind, then what excuse do we have in this modern life to not learn how to control how we respond to the world? Overthinking is a skilled liar. It convinces you that everything is serious, that silence means rejection, that criticism equals failure, that not being chosen is proof you're not good enough. But the Stoics warned us about this centuries ago. Emotions are immediate reactions. Reason is the compass. In Make Your Bed, U.S. Navy Admiral William McRaven recounts a powerful moment during brutal SEAL training. It was freezing cold. They were forced to lie in the mud in the middle of the night, exhausted, shivering, and feeling like their bodies couldn't take another second. Moans echoed. Some began to panic. Then, unexpectedly, one trainee started singing, not because he was happy, but because he chose not to surrender his mind. Gradually, another joined in, then a third, then the whole group. In the freezing mud, they stopped complaining. They laughed, they patted each other on the back, and they made it through that night. That's the core of Stoic philosophy. When you can't change the situation, you can still choose your response. Not fear, but spirit and reason. Overthinking paralyzes you. But one right choice, even something as simple as singing, can shift your entire experience. Overthinking starts with emotion, worry, fear, confusion. Then it blows everything out of proportion, spinning your mind into imaginary disasters. The Stoics chose another path. They asked themselves the hard questions, just as Epictetus taught. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. That question is a door. When you stop reacting emotionally and start analyzing, the truth becomes clearer. A message left unanswered isn't necessarily rejection. Someone turning you down isn't because you're lacking, but because they have their own standards. One failure isn't evidence of failure, it's data to refine your path. The problem isn't the event, it's how you think about the event. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's a simple truth, but a revolutionary one. You can stop overthinking by sitting still, taking a deep breath, and asking the right question. Instead of, "Why is this happening?" ask, "Am I interpreting this reasonably?" And if not, revise. Write it down. Look at it through a clearer lens. Just like Marcus Aurelius did, day after day, through his journal. Imagine you're in a dark room. Overthinking is when you panic because you can't see. Stoicism is when you switch on the light and realize the ghost you feared is just a coat on a hanger. That's the power of reason, not to erase emotion, but to place it under the light of truth. I'm not telling you to be numb. Stoics aren't cold. They feel everything, but they don't let emotion dictate their actions. They think deeply, then act decisively. That's how they stay free even when the world around them is chaos. Overthinking is a habit, and like all habits, it can change. Every time you choose reason over reaction, you're rebuilding a new path in your mind. It's not easy at first, but step by step, you see more clearly, stand more firmly, and act with more conviction. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you understand it, how you respond to it, and what you learn from it. And in that power to self-reflect, that's where true strength lives. What about you? Are you letting emotion drive your actions? Have you ever overcome overthinking with reason? Share your story or perspective in the comments. I read everyone. Let's learn to live more clearly, like modern-day Stoics. Number 4. Write down your thoughts to see clearly and detach yourself from them. There is a quiet but powerful habit that Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor and philosopher, practiced every day. He wrote down what he thought, not for praise or to share online. He wrote to separate himself from the chaos of his thoughts, to look at himself with honesty and clarity. In a world where the mind is easily swept up by emotions, reactions, anxiety, and imagination, writing is a silent yet powerful act of resistance, a way to push back against the fog of our own perception. Overthinking has a way of inflating everything. A small matter can spiral into an endless chain of worry. The mind starts replaying the past like a broken tape, then leaps into the future with hundreds of assumptions that haven't happened. But when you write down what's going on in your head, you begin to step outside that whirlwind. You shift from being trapped inside your thoughts to becoming the observer of them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The pain, he said, doesn't come from the situation, but from the way you see it, and you can change that perception at any time. Writing is the first step toward doing just that. When you put pen to paper and ask, "What am I thinking?" you break free from being identified with your mind. And when you continue to ask, "Is this true? Is this useful?" you are using reason to separate emotion from fact. That's the essence of Stoicism, not to run from emotions, but to face and examine them with a clear mind. Here, writing isn't just a psychological tool, it's a spiritual act. Because in the moment you sit down, shut out the noise of the world, and look directly into your own mind, you're doing something like prayer, a dialogue with yourself, and within yourself with God. When your mind is quiet and honest, you create space for the sacred to speak. Maybe God doesn't appear in words, but the clarity in your thinking, the peace that comes from seeing the truth, that is one of the ways he shows up. The Stoic would nod. The silence they seek is not emptiness, but awareness. A mind trained through daily writing, through observing its thoughts truthfully, is a mind ready to live a life of depth and meaning. And that's why writing is not just a method. It's a sacred habit. It is a form of inner discipline, one that no one but you can do. No one else knows exactly what's going on inside your head. And if you don't stop to clarify it, who will? This practice becomes even more vital in an age when our thinking is fractured by social media, by the flood of information, by pressure to succeed and meet expectations. You don't have to live in reaction. You can pause, open a blank page, write down what you're feeling, name the fear, trace the root of your anger, ask yourself why you feel worthless, then ask, is this even true? And if you are a person of faith, how would God see this? The Stoics won't promise you'll feel better after a few lines, but they knew this. You'll see things more clearly. And sometimes clarity, not comfort or certainty, is exactly what you need to act wisely. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees them. And once you write them down, you reclaim that position, the observer, the one who chooses how to respond, the one who decides to live a life not led by fleeting emotions, but by reason, clarity, and sometimes a deep-rooted faith. Today's action: simple. Open a notebook. Write down the first thought in your head. Then ask, is this worth letting control me? You'll be surprised by what you find. Number 5. Accept the present as it is. We often wish things had turned out differently. If only that hadn't happened. If only we had chosen a different path. If only we hadn't said those words that day. And it's from these very if-onlys that overthinking begins to eat away at our minds. But Stoics take a completely different approach. Instead of trying to change what can't be changed, they accept it, and more than that, they embrace reality, embrace their fate, just as Nietzsche once wrote, amor fati, love your fate. For a Stoic, acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It's not passivity, it's awareness. It's the refusal to waste energy on things that have happened, are happening, or are beyond control. They don't spend their lives fighting the unchangeable. They choose to look straight at it, face it, and embrace life even when it doesn't go their way. Epictetus, a man who lived much of his life as a slave, said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." That line isn't just a piece of theory. It's a guide for living more lightly, because when we stop demanding reality to be different, we begin to see it more clearly. And from that clarity, we can act with greater wisdom. Imagine you've just lost your job. The first reaction is usually, why me? Was it fair? What if I had done things differently? And from there, you spiral into overthinking, dissecting every detail, replaying every meeting, imagining endless what-if scenarios. But stop. Ask the Stoic question, can this job loss be undone? If not, then the only rational move is acceptance, and from there, action. A practicing Stoic would view the job loss as a natural part of life. They don't avoid the pain, but they also don't let it consume them. They'll ask, what skills can I learn now? What opportunities does this open up? Is this the moment to pursue the path I've truly wanted? They accept the present, and from that acceptance, they see the road ahead more clearly. The same applies to love. When someone leaves us, the instinct is to blame ourselves, search for answers, cling to old memories, and fantasize about their return. But that's an illusion. Stoics don't live in illusions. They return to the only thing that's real, the present. That person is gone. The sadness is real, but it's the resistance that causes deeper pain. They don't forget, but they don't cling. They choose to live fully, starting from this moment. The same goes for illness, for accidents, for breakups. Stoics always return to the present, not to soothe themselves with everything will be okay, but to remind themselves, this is reality and I will respond to it with character. Because to a Stoic, character is the one thing fate can never take away. This kind of acceptance doesn't kill motivation. On the contrary, it frees mental energy so you can act without being shackled by emotional weight. When you accept reality, you stop swimming upstream. You start moving with the current and steering it your way. Amor fati is not a slogan, it's a way of life. A way to train your mind so that when you wake up each morning, you can look at life exactly as it is and say, I'm in. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped resisting and started living. So, what do you think about the idea of amor fati? Have you ever fought reality so hard it left you drained? Share your experience in the comments so we can learn together how to live with more clarity, more ease, and more strength. Number 6. Limit information. Don't overload your mind. To Marcus Aurelius, the mind is not just a place where thoughts occur, it is the final stronghold of personal freedom. Once it is overrun by the trivial, the meaningless, or the chaotic, you are no longer the master of yourself. And you begin to feel like you're drowning not in water, but in a flood of data, emotions, news, and the noise of our time. People in the past had to endure war, famine, and loss, but they weren't surrounded by hundreds of notifications each day, fake news cycles, social media drama, or the emotional spillover of thousands of strangers' lives. We, on the other hand, wake up with a phone in hand, exposed to far too much before our consciousness is even fully awake. Our personal space is suffocated, and from there, overthinking begins to grow silently. Stoic philosophy never condemns the world. It simply asks, what is within your control? You can't shut down the internet, but you can choose not to click on a clickbait headline. You can't stop the nonsense that spreads out there, but you can limit what you allow into your mind. Overthinking doesn't just come from thinking too much. It comes from consuming too much, too fast, too unconsciously. And most of what you consume doesn't help you live better. It just makes you compare, worry, feel inadequate, and endlessly analyze things you cannot change. So the Stoics advise you, return to restraint. Read less news if it doesn't concern you. Tune out the drama if you have nothing to contribute. And every day, give yourself at least 30 minutes of silence, no social media, no background noise, no digital reflexes. Just you, your breath, and a blank page. You can write. You can breathe. You can simply sit there, do nothing. That's not laziness. That's inner housekeeping, like Marcus Aurelius did when he wrote his journals at night. An emotional sweep, a filter that helps you keep only what truly matters. Because if you don't carefully choose what enters your mind, someone else will choose for you. Social media will choose. Algorithms will choose. Ads will choose. And eventually, you'll just be a temporary storage unit for things you never intended to carry. You don't need to know everything. You only need to know what's unsettling you. You don't need to hear it all. You only need to hear your own inner voice clearly. The less you consume, the more you see. The less you're stimulated, the more decisive you become. Overthinking doesn't need to be eliminated. It just needs a quieter, clearer environment, so it can dissolve like fog under the morning sun. Because in the end, you don't need to become someone who knows a lot. You just need to become someone who knows what is enough. And once clarity returns thanks to silence, you'll realize this. Life doesn't wait for you to decide before it begins. It's moving, every day, every hour. And that leads us to another truth hard to hear, but impossible to ignore. Death is always close. And that very awareness, if you're brave enough to face it, becomes the deepest motivation for you to live wisely, live truly, and live now. So don't stop. In the next part, we will face the irreversible truth together. And from that, you will understand why the Stoics did not fear death, but through it lived a life that was never wasted. Number 7. Death is not far away, so don't waste time thinking about it. We often think of death as something distant, something that happens to someone else, or later. But to a Stoic, death isn't a future event. It's a reality that's always close by. And it's precisely this awareness that teaches them how to live clearly, without delay, and without getting tangled in the clutter of their own mind. Overthinking is a form of wasting life. It stops us in the middle of living. We erode our time with thoughts that lead to no action. Overanalyzing, replaying memories, imagining disasters. All of these are mental traps, and all of them steal the most precious thing we have, time. Seneca's famous words ring like a wake-up call. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. We don't lack time, we lack awareness. We lack the courage to live as if each moment could be the last. Look at the story of American firefighter Joe Torrillo, a real person who miraculously survived the 9/11 attacks. When the towers collapsed, Joe was buried under the rubble. For hours, he didn't know if he'd ever see the light of day again. And in that moment, teetering on the edge of death, he said his mind stopped thinking about the things he used to worry about: work, petty arguments, or the should-haves. He thought only of two things: the people he loved and the things he hadn't done yet. When Joe survived and walked out of the wreckage, he was no longer the same person. He stopped postponing. He started living with urgency, with clarity, with gratitude. That's exactly what the Stoics want to teach us. If you live as if death is always near, you won't let your mind be hijacked by trivial fears anymore. So why do we keep hesitating? Why do we let time slip away in spirals of thought? Maybe because we still believe we have time. We think we can analyze a bit more, prepare a bit more, and wait for the perfect moment. But death gives no notice. It doesn't arrive on schedule. And that's exactly why you have to live right now. Overthinking doesn't just delay action. It makes us forget we're alive. It puts us in a state of suspension, as if real life will begin once everything is clearer. But the truth is, absolute clarity never comes. Only commitment does. You have to learn to act while still unsure, walk while still afraid, and choose while still uncertain. Because if you keep waiting, you're trading your time for an illusion. The Stoics chose action. They wrote, they fought, they loved. They refused to waste time on the meaningless because they knew time would not always be theirs. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Not because they were pessimists, but because they were realists. They didn't let the mind escape into the past or future. They lived in the present, the only place where life actually happens. and you can do that too. Every time you're about to spiral into overthinking, ask yourself, if this were my last day, would I choose to think this way? If the answer is no, stop. Breathe, act. You don't need to control everything to live clearly. You just need to remember that time is limited and you're still alive. So don't waste it in mental loops. Think carefully, then move straight into action. Live like every moment is a gift, because in truth, it is. Overthinking isn't a fixed trait. It's just a habit, and habits can change. The Stoics gave us a way out. Distinguish what you can control, focus on action, let reason lead. Write down your thoughts to see them clearly. Accept reality as it is. Reduce noise, and remember, your time is limited. You don't have to overpower your mind. You just need to learn how to see it clearly. Like Marcus, like Epictetus once did. You can't control everything, but you can always control how you respond. And that's enough to live with more clarity, more decisiveness, like someone truly free. So what do you tend to overthink the most? Is it work, relationships, or just an unanswered message? Share it in the comments. I read them all. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. And don't forget to check out the video at the end. It'll help you go deeper into how Stoicism applies to everyday life.